Hi, I wanted to talk about the shame cycle as it relates to all of us, all human beings, and especially when it comes to our addictive patterns. I believe that all human beings have behaviors, thoughts, habits that lead us to a cycle of shame. And if we are not aware that it's there, we find ourselves repeating things over and over again and creating a great disconnect with ourselves because the experience of shame is overwhelming and painful. And so when we find ourselves behaving in a certain way or thinking in a certain way or acting out in a certain way, we turn to self punishing behaviors. We think we're numbing out, we think we're seeking pleasure, perhaps, but it's really a punishment because we become more isolated and more trapped in the shame. So, shame is different from guilt. Guilt is a response to feeling regret about a behavior. Shame is more about the identity of self being bad. And um, I prefer actually the word regret over guilt because guilt can also be used as a crutch, where I know for myself, I used to feel guilty about everything. I feel guilty about this. I feel guilty about that. I feel guilty about not doing right by myself. I feel guilty about, and perhaps it was, some kind of internalized religious wound or, just whatever perfect storm of experiences that caused that for me. But I also realized that guilt allowed me to stay paralyzed. Because if I just kept beating myself up and telling myself how guilty I was, I didn't have to be accountable for feeling and creating a fulfilling life and feeling good about myself. So, of course, that leads to shame, and it's not something that I was aware was underneath all my stuff, even underneath my accomplishments, even underneath the things that I felt proud of and the characteristics and traits that I enjoy in myself. I didn't know that underneath at the core there was this shame that was based on lies. It was based on a feeling of not good enough, a feeling of too much, being too much, a feeling of not belonging, a feeling of perfectionism, always trying, having this set of ideals that I feel like would make my life, you know, um, worthy and make myself worthy by living in a certain way, by looking a certain way, by having a certain body or a certain level, a certain vocabulary, or a certain amount of money, or whatever it is for each one of us. And so, unfortunately, our society is not teaching us and teaching our children that human beings, our nature is to be flawed until we go through the spiritual journey of self-actualization, of self-realization, of first discovering that we have a divine self, and then practicing to become one with that self, to realize that self. But that's a journey, and I'm not there yet. And I haven't met anybody that's there yet. So, what that's telling me is that first we need to acknowledge our flaws and our shadows, the things that we don't want to look at because they trigger the shame. And we have to correct our thinking. We have to understand that everybody has these flaws, that these are the shadows within us that we must own and also use as a tool to grow and to learn from. Um, so we have these unrealistic expectations of ourselves, and I'm afraid, unfortunately, children, especially nowadays, but I guess always, um, are are not being taught about our our lower nature, our nature that includes strengths and flaws, and our higher nature, and that is the divine nature. Maybe they're being taught. Maybe some families bring their kids to to some kind of spiritual uh, temple or church, and or maybe parents have these conversations with your kids. I hope so. That'd be awesome. But most aren't, because most are kind of most families are swept into this whirlpool of our society that tells us that we have to go out and achieve and not stop until we've succeeded these perceived accolades at attaining these perceived accolades and trophies and dollars and power and skill sets that are going to bring us fulfillment and peace. And that is just not true, because if you ask anybody, and that anybody is completely honest with you, there is very likely going to be an admission of something is missing. Maybe not for everybody, but most of us are seeking something more than what our external world and society promotes as the way to peace and serenity and fulfillment and joy. We have moments of happiness and pleasure. We have moments of conquering and achieving, and those things feel good. And in no way do I mean to devalue our our talents and our goals. However, we need to, press pause and have a look at how there is this piece inside of us that's being neglected. And so we become more and more addicted to doing and escaping from that shame and or guilt and or regret, but more importantly, that shame that lives inside of every one of us that tells us we're not enough, we're not doing enough, we're not getting enough. We need to do more and more and more and more and more. Maybe we like what we are doing, but it's never enough. So this creates a need to escape. This creates a need to numb, and then we act out and try to um, have some relief, have some pleasure, have some forgetting. And of course, that perpetuates the shame cycle. So, first and foremost, as I said, it's all about recognizing that we're all human. We all have this lower nature. It's normal, it's natural. We're supposed to make mistakes and learn from them. And a mistake, understanding what a mistake is very important. A mistake doesn't make someone bad, even if their behavior was really bad. It means that they have a big lesson to learn. But we are all worthy. We all have value at our very core. And it is a lie and abusive to assert that there is any one person that does not have that same worthiness and value and the same uh, um, permission to learn from their lessons. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I know for me, I've had to repeat some lessons over and over again, lots of times actually, still. So I guess I would ask you to consider that, and also to consider if you've never considered yourself a person who has shame but yet you struggle with these habits and patterns that are harmful to you, are harmful to you mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, such as substance use or overeating, oversexing, shopping, whatever, um, obsessing about things, anxious thinking, being fear driven. If any of that is going on, those are habits that are harmful. They steal our ability to fulfill our purpose and to enjoy the process of doing so. So we are invited to have a look at, okay, what is underneath this compulsive behavior or this obsessive thinking? Why am I doing this when I know it doesn't feel good? Am I lying to myself if I tell myself I really don't care? Am I lying to myself if I tell myself, oh, this really isn't harming me? Um, because that's a huge part of the shame cycle too, is being dishonest with ourselves. So for anyone, if you're like me and you're kind of doing life and you're not doing so bad, and you've come across some patterns and habits of thought and behavior that you're not thrilled about, maybe have a look inside at where that shame is hiding. And shame is also just a pattern of thought that's been ingrained over time, maybe years. Um, it's habitual. It's an automatic reaction oftentimes. And mindfulness and being aware and having a look at myself and getting honest with myself and connect with myself is the process that we need to engage in order to reveal this is what's going on. That I have some old shame patterns, there could be some new ones, but I have some old shame patterns that I am holding on to based on beliefs that come from our society, that come from perhaps our family, that come from abusive situations, and or even in sincere attempts where adults, teachers, clergy, officers, parents, doctors, whatever, may have said the littlest thing, and a child can turn that into something that is a part of the ball of shame that they carry. So we must get to the bottom of it, and we must remember. So what's the solution here? How do we get rid of this? How do we get rid of these habits of shame, these beliefs about not being good, being bad? Number one is letting go of the ignorant belief that I'm the only one that does these things or I'm bad. And number two, the practices of humility and compassion. Humility is not embarrassment. Humility is not humiliation. Humility is recognizing unity, that we're all the same. Humility is not that I'm better than or less than. That's actually impossible. Humility is recognizing that I am you and you are me, that we all have flaws, that we all have our lessons. And can I be humble enough to not lower my standards, but to be realistic and be fair, and to myself and others, to be forgiving and accepting and give grace to myself and others, for being human is not easy, and having this ego is not easy, and living in this world, this complex society, is not easy. So the practice of humility is like, hey, we're all in this together. This is not easy. It's okay. Which leads us to then the building of compassion. And I know I have always felt like I was a very compassionate person. Maybe I was empathetic, in that I could feel into and what others were feeling and relate to them, and I could feel their feelings sometimes. But compassion is different. Compassion is being able to love others and myself, regardless of the good, bad, or ugly, and bringing that understanding. I look at compassion as love plus understanding. Love plus understanding that I am just a human being and I'm learning, and giving that part of me, whether it's a younger part of me or this me today, a little compassion when I feel like I've screwed up or I've repeated harmful behavior or a bad habit, or just truly came from an arrogant, egoic place. Can I recognize it, pause, be humble, say, yep, this happens to everybody, and say, that's okay. It's okay. And start again. It is never too late to start again. Every moment is a new moment. It's more important to keep ourselves cleansed by not holding on to the shame and the regrets, and letting them go, making amends as quickly as we can without groveling, just from a humble place and saying, well, I'm sorry, I screwed up, or I didn't mean to hurt you, or maybe I did mean to hurt you and I was just had a moment of being fear driven or anger driven, which is what all human beings have to deal with. So can we be honest about that? Can we apologize? Can we make it right? Can we practice living in right order with respect, love, and understanding to each other, so that I'm not shaming others, and I don't have to shame myself. Um, so all that comes from my own personal lessons, as well as working with many, many other people. I've seen a lot of changes in people the more I have started to really increase the focus on compassion and letting go of shame, and being honest with ourselves about our human nature that operates at a low level, at an egoic level, that wants what it wants, that it's selfish, it's habitual, it's pleasure seeking. That's the lower nature of being human. We all go there, we all operate from there, period. And then we operate at higher levels, and maybe another higher level, and then maybe another higher level, and then sometimes we go bounce right back down there. So can we forgive? Can we be humble? Can we practice compassion? Thank you for having a listen. I hope that was helpful, and feel free to reach out or post any comments or questions below. I love hearing from you. Bye.